Hi, welcome back to Toadstool Tarot. Following a recent dearth of deliveries, I got a little bit fidgety and ordered a bunch of decks online. I had seen for a while this deck of cards by Edward Gorey called the Fan Tod pack. And I didn't order it as much as I love Edward Gorey because there's only 20 cards in it. And I thought, ugh. Majors only card decks that have 22 cards in it are problematic enough with shuffling that 20 just kind of didn't feel like enough. Then, this last week or so, I had designed my own deck, and it's a majors only, and I have a couple other majors only decks. And after handling them, I've gotten to feel better about handling smaller decks, packs. And I am an Edward Gorey fan. I've been collecting his stuff, his books, for years. And there's a card in this deck it's an unnamed card, called the Black Doll. Well, it's not called the Black Doll. I know it's the Black Doll because it was the illustration used on a first edition of a book that I have by him that came out in 1973 by Gotham Book Mart. And it's a silent film screenplay by Edward Gorey with no illustrations in it, which is odd because he's all about illustration. But this one, the only illustration is that little tipped-in image on the front cover of the Black Doll, which is highly mysterious. It's this faceless little figure with no arms. And it's always intrigued me. And I guess it's intrigued others too. Not too long ago, they apparently made a plush version of the doll for sale. I didn't buy it. It was actually larger than I expected. I think it's about 13 inches tall or something. And I don't know if it's out of print and unavailable. Currently it's unavailable, but I don't know if that's a temporary thing or, if it's permanently unavailable. Anyway, there's that, and then I also recently noticed, searching about this, that they reprinted this book and included a bunch of illustrations, and that's, I think, through Pomegranate Press, which I saw on Amazon. I can't decide whether to order that because I already have the first edition, and I don't know if it was his estate or foundation that issued that book with the illustrations. I don't know that it was his intent to have it illustrated since he originally released it this way. But anyway, I went ahead and I ordered this deck, the Fan Tod pack. It's put out by Pomegranate. Seems to be his publisher lately. The box is a little bit dented in the corners. It's a really, really thick, heavy, sturdy box, and it's not that easy to open. The top sticks out a little bit, but it's kind of hard to get a grip on, but it's a really hefty box. It's got this really nice book inside that's, like you usually have a little white book in with oracle cards or tarot cards. And he has developed a whole, persona around the creator of this deck, which leads me to wonder if Patrick Valenza took some inspiration from this for his Mildred Payne's pocket oracle, and building up the sort of mystique and the backstory of Mildred Payne. Because this came out originally in 1995, I believe. But anyway, I want to tell you a little bit of the story here. It says, the awful vista of the year, now that you have learned of all the dreadful things that have overtaken your friends and relations during the past year as scribbled on the inside of their Christmas cards, don't you want to know what dreadful things lie in wait for you? To this end, Madame Groeda Weird, a nom de guerre merely, her true one is known to few this side of the grave, has consented to have the Fantod pack printed here. Madame Weird, who is of mixed Finnish and Egyptian extraction, has devoted her life to divination and is the author of, among a shelf of other works, Floating Tambourines, a collection of esoteric verse, and The Future Speaks Through Entrails. Her career as one of the most celebrated of trance mediums came to a close when she lost 2 1/3 fingers as the result of a contretemps during an ectoplasmic manifestation. She has long since been persona non grata to many of the rich and famous because of her fearless predictions of disaster. She now makes her home in Staten Island, the one that's part of Tierra del Fuego, and is writing what is hoped may be the definitive treatise on the mystic being. Of the Fantod pack itself, Madame Weird will only say that its origin may not be divulged, but it is of incredible antiquity. To read your fortune, first shuffle the pack and take it in your left hand, stand in the center of a sparsely furnished room, and close your eyes. Fling the pack into the air. Keep your eyes closed. Pick up 5 cards from the floor, keeping them in order. Once you have the 5 cards and your eyes are open, place them face up in the form of a cross, the first in the center, the second above, the third on the left, the fourth on the right, and the fifth at the bottom. The center card represents and defines a basic situation in which you find yourself. The card above, something from the past that continues to affect your future. The card on the left, your inner self. The card on the right, the outer world. The lowest card symbolizes something about to come into being in the near future. Before passing to the meanings of the individual cards, a few general remarks may not be amiss. Interpretation must always depend on the character and circumstances of the person consulting the pack. What might portend a wipeout for a teenage hot dogger in Yokohama might warn an octogenarian spinster in Minot, North Dakota of a fall in the bathtub, though of course the results might come to much the same thing. And it goes on. And there's a page for each of the cards and a number of seemingly totally unrelated associations and mysterious key words and phrases. But it's a lot of fun. Now, when I got this deck and saw it was only 20 cards, I also noticed there was another deck online by him, and I thought, oh, it's only 20 cards. Maybe I could combine the two into one oracle, but we'll get into that later. It turns out they're different size cards, so it doesn't work, but we'll get into that in a bit. So, these cards they're heavily laminated, very thick cardstock, and they have very sharp corners. So I got out my corner rounder and rounded the corners, which some people might frown upon, but they feel better to me, and I love using my corner rounder whenever possible. This is the back design. They're highly glossy, so I hope they're not too reflective to display properly. And you can see each one has an illustration and a simple phrase at the bottom. The ladder, the child, the limb, the yellow bird. Pause your video as needed. The stones, the effigy, the insects, the plant, the waltzing mouse, the urn, the feather, the bundle, the sea, the écorché, the bottle, the burning head, the blue dog, the ancestor, the tunnel, and the unnamed card, which is the black doll. These remind me very much of Mildred Payne's Oracle and also Patrick Balenza's Abandoned Oracle. Anyway, if I had a conversation with him, I'd ask him if he's familiar with this. I'm sure he's aware of Edward Gorey. I don't know if he's familiar with this deck, but it feels like it might have been some inspiration. The other deck, which is a little bit different, a lot of times Edward Gorey's books seem like a string of unrelated images. Like he usually has an illustration with kind of a one-liner, caption underneath, and they get strung together in a story that's sort of isn't really a story, it's just a collection of images and statements. So this is intriguing. It's called The Helpless Doorknob, a Shuffled Story by Edward Gorey. And I haven't corner-routed this yet, but I will. But the idea of this one is it's not really an oracle deck. It's more of a concept. It says, as Gorey himself explained in the original edition, this shuffle story is made up of 20 cards which can be read in, I can't even read this number, it looks like maybe 2 trillion or zillion 432 billion 902 million, I mean, a huge number of different ways. I don't know how many combinations you can get out of 20 cards. Some mathematician among you can calculate it, I guess. I don't know if this is the actual number or if it's just a made-up number. But anyway, the point is you can shuffle these cards and make countless stories out of them. I probably shouldn't read you all the cards, but I will show them to you quickly, or at least some of them. The card backs I didn't like at first because they seem, there's like, you can see there's like a misalignment there and a line down the center. And then I thought, oh, it's sort of like mismatched wallpaper, like somebody papered a room and then didn't line up the seams properly, and that sort of tells a story of its own, So the first card in here, I'm not really sure if these were in a specific order, or if it matters because they're going to be shuffled in random order anyway, but here's the first one. Seems like also these are filled with characters who all seem to have names beginning with the initial A, which led me to wonder if he had originally intended on issuing a number of additional groups of cards, like an A deck, a B deck, and so forth. Don't know. Again, these are really thick, very thick cards and very highly laminated. So if some people don't like that, that's the deal. I also, when doing a little bit of research about the Black Doll, discovered a movie from the 1930s called The Black Doll, a murder mystery, which is totally unrelated to Edward Gorey or his screenplay for silent film. The 1930s one is not a silent film, but it's a very early kind of film noir movie. And I read online that during his early years in New York, Edward Gorey was extremely fascinated, and one might even say obsessed with watching lots of old, classic B movie mysteries and film noir type movies. So I don't know whether the Black Doll movie, whether he ever saw it or whether it influenced his creation of the Black Doll character or the idea of a silent film screenplay. But you can find the film actually on YouTube and have a look at it if you want. It's sort of entertaining. I've become recently more fascinated as I've been homebound watching old black and white early movies on YouTube, especially the old murder mysteries and kind of horror films. The real early ones intrigue me. So anyway, I'm going to get out my corner rounder now and have some fun with this, then shuffle it and see what kind of stories I come up with. Till next time.